Hi there, and welcome back to Monsters and Mayhem. Today's topic, witches. Witches. We might commonly know them as the green-faced and warded women who fly around on broomsticks at night. But most people might not know that they came from a true part of history. Witches have a much darker past than you might know. Over hundreds of years, witches were burned at the stakes and executed in horrendous ways. How did this all happen? Why did this happen? Who were they? And that's what we're going to be discussing today. The history of witches stretches back far beyond the trials of which we associate with them today. In Europe, from as far back as at least 1258, we have literature that mention things that we associate with witchcraft. From a papal decision in 1258, we can see that there's an investigation into if the Inquisition should punish fortune tellers. Around 1300, we have texts detailing magically induced impotence and remedies for it, which led to a writer of it getting in trouble. In 1318, a papal bull threatened any workers of magic or worshipper demons with excommunication. Even a letter from 1338 describes how two women who were thought to be in the devil's service ended up getting arrested. Events similar to those just listed continued for over a century, leading up to and through the witch crazes. In 1428, what is considered to be the first true witch trials, the Valais witch trials, started. The raising worry of witches continued to increase from here. In 1486, one of the most important texts relating to the persecution of witches was published, the Malleus Maleficarum. Malleus Maleficarum is a book that was similar to propaganda or even a manual for anti-witch zealots of the time. This book outlined many different beliefs held about witches at the time. Some such ideas were the manipulation of the male genitals, witches giving power through a pact with the devil, or even that some midwives are witches waiting to sacrifice and kill children in the womb to sacrifice them to the devil. Though witches had grown as a perceived threat in Europe, with a trial even happening in the 15th century, the 16th century is where it all takes off. One major factor to this increase is the Protestant Reformation. The Reformation shattered the worldview of the people in Europe, with the once homogeneous Christian body of the continent now being divided. One of the major events stemming from this is the lack of options for women to live independently. With nunneries being closed, this meant that women who wanted to live on their own or did not want to marry no longer had an acceptable place to go in society. On top of this, discussion over the devil and devilish intervention was an all-time peak. With a world that seemed to be falling apart due to religion, the persecution of witches rose. The persecution of witches only grew throughout the 17th century. Gary K. Waite describes in his book Eradicating the Devil's Minions, Anabaptists and Witches in Reformation Europe, 1535 to 1600, how on the 2nd of December in 1562, in the small southwestern German town of Weissensteg, 20 women were burned at the stake for allegedly causing a hailstorm 4 months earlier. In the following year alone, the count approved 43 more witch burnings. These numbers were only the start. In his book, Witch Hunts from Salem to Guantanamo Bay, Robert Rapley claims that in Bamberg, Germany, 453 people were accused of being witches from just 1626 to 1630 alone. 317 women and 136 men. A total of 278 people were condemned to death. Mass witch trials were held from 1625 to 1631 in Bamberg and its neighboring nearby town, Würzburg. With fear instilled in the people with conditions like starvation and war, people only felt that witches were an even more real threat. In Salem, in 1692, the debatably most famous ever witch trials were held. These started with just 4 girls making accusations against 3 other women. But then after that, pandemonium spread across the entire town, leading to around 200 more people being accused, with 19 being executed. People who have been supposed to be witches throughout history have been in a tragic position. These people have suffered a sad fate, and were likely innocent people who were just deemed suspicious or loosely suspected as dealing with the devil. Suddenly, when just living their lives, many end up being burned at the stake, amongst even worse methods of being executed. Today, though, we celebrate witches. They're seen as a cultural staple and common around times such as Halloween. Witches were once seen as a threat, but now in our modern world, they're more popular than ever. Unlike many other monsters in history, though, witches were once real. Even though they may have not had demonic powers or ridden on a broom, they were once around and were seen as a true threat. If you ever go out as a witch on Halloween, consider the past and be happy that you too aren't being burned on the stake. Thank you, and have a spooky night.